Daily Courier's version of political stories from 2014, because yesterday was the last day of the year and the Daily Courier wants to keep you informed, that's what they say, about all the issues that we need to know in politics. And it's written by Jeff Duell and the infamous Jim Moore, who sits in the same meetings that we do and doesn't see any of the same things that we see.
Right.
Your response is overwhelming. Okay,
well,
so
it's undeniable fact. I mean, if you've been going to these meetings as long as Dale has, and I've attended a number of them. He sits back there in the corner of the room and doesn't do much. And
you mean Jim does? Jim Moore does, not me.
Right? Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right. So here's an example. The only mention of Simon Hare, just one of 3 examples of county commissioners, is that he ran for office and got elected. This is the Simon Hare, according to the Daily Courier, this is the Simon Hare political news of the entire year.
Yeah, that sums up to his 2014. Although in the article that was posted a couple of days ago in the Courier of the top 10 stories of the year, they did make mention, a very brief mention, of the cell phone faux pas.
But I don't recall seeing that as one of the stories in their 2014 summary of events. Do you?
No, but in fairness, that is the top 10, and how that didn't make it into the top 10, I'm not exactly sure. But
that's my point. Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so here are some of the things that we saw in this past year that might deserve a little bit of recognition from our local not-so-Daily Courier. One of them was, these are in chronological order, but not necessarily in order of importance, when Keith Heck actually ended up calling a citizen, happened to be me, a lying maggot for repeating what was already on videotape and on the county's website, on their audio recording. A lying maggot, it did happen, there was no lying, and my mother didn't appreciate me being referred to as the larvae of a fly.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I get that. You know what? I mean, it's odd, because you would think that how one of our county commissioners treats citizens of the county would be news.
In some places, it would be if a sitting county commissioner on live television called a citizen a lying maggot, especially when the citizen is telling the 100% truth. That's exactly what happened.
Yes. Well, I guess that's the political slant of the Courier in play there.
Well, another one is the very first time that the new chair, who was Cheryl Walker, decided to try to wield her power by insisting that certain rules existed which don't exist, because you can ask for the rules, and they were never able to give them to us by state law because they don't exist. And she actually called the police who came there and then left scratching their heads because there's no rule. And twice she called the police and stopped the entire proceeding, mostly because either I had or Sandy Casanelli had a little 2-inch camera, video camera, which is allowed by law, and she said, well, there are rules about it's got to be in your lap. No, it doesn't.
Now, I could see that not making the top 10, but did that even make the paper?
No, it wasn't even in the paper, not at all. And I think, well, it's sort of an amusing story. It maybe wasn't so much at the time, but here's this tiny little camera, and she says the fire marshal says that can be a danger. What? And the police then, I talked with them afterwards, and they were like, what was that? They just couldn't believe it. This was Cheryl Walker's not doing it now, but she was absolutely insistent that there are rules, there are rules. Well, they couldn't produce the rules. But this was never handed out as a press release to Jim Moore of the Daily Courier. They're not going to print it. It never
Well,
happened.
an interesting point about this is that when people pursue power and then they finally achieve it, it's entirely possible that they may decide that they're going to wield power in a in a way that they have thought out in their head is going to work, and then she did that, and it didn't really work out very well for her. And I think most who have observed her, she's kind of backed off on the tyrannical behavior. It sort of makes me wonder what's going to happen when Keith Heck gets in there, and how the new power is going to affect him.
Well, at the times when he has run the meeting when Cheryl wasn't there, it's not been any better. It's been just as bad. So my guess is we're really in for a wild ride. But you can depend on it. The police are not going to be willing participants in something that's completely false.
Well, and let's hope that he gained something from having observed what took place in the last year with some of the things that Cheryl did. One can hope.
Well, what did the Courier learn? In this case, one would hope that freedom of the press and the freedom of speech, that they would stand up for such things, even if they don't agree with the people who are speaking. Well, that's right out the window, because they're not going to do that. There was a couple of times where Cheryl Walker made up rules that you cannot speak about a government official. You cannot speak about any government official unless that official is in the same room.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that means you can't talk about the president, because
Yes.
unless the president's in that room. You can't talk about Richard Nixon because he's dead. You can't talk about any employee or any government official at all. Well, basically, unless the government agrees with you, because there's another rule that says that if you are critical of the government, of our local government, that first it bordered on slander, and now it is slander. You criticize the government. I'm not making this up. It's on the video. She's saying it flat out, that being critical of the government is slanderous behavior.
Yeah.
No matter if it's true or not.
Very interesting interpretation of the Constitution.
Well, where was the Courier? I mean, we would think that the Courier would be for freedom of the press and freedom of speech, but the Courier was not. When Keith Heck called another citizen a slopehead, this is the Asian equivalent of the N-word. And he calls this guy a slopehead, and where's any reaction from anybody at all?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing about racial slurs. It depends on who's making them in many cases as to whether or not they get reported or whether there is outrage.
Really? Gosh. Well, okay, looking at an entirely different side, maybe the internal workings of our county government, the Executive Compensation Committee is appointed by the commissioners to look at how we're going to pay the top executives in county government. And they were pretty upset with the way that things went in the last budget, because they had suggested that there be some changes and that you take a look at not comparing Josephine County with the richest counties in the state, but you compare Josephine County, the comparators, that's an important word here. Josephine County would then be compared with other counties with similar amount of money available to them, similar law enforcement problems, similar population, yes, but not just population, similar economics. And they were ignored, and they all quit. All of them quit. Now, I've never seen a time when a committee like that just completely quit. Here's the problem. They quit out of protest, But if there's nothing in the Courier, of course we carried it because it's one of, I mean, we did over 300 stories on videotape this year alone. And so we carried it, and some people saw it. But if it's not going to be in the Courier, why, your stand for justice of these people who were all over the map when it came to believing in the same things the commissioners do, that when they all quit en masse and nobody covers it, it's not much of symbolism because nobody knew. Couldn't get the Courier to cover that. Couldn't get the Courier to talk to them.
Yes, and what's interesting is that the one of the top 10 stories there was how we're about to hit the fiscal cliff in mid 2015 here, and what makes that an interesting story, along with I mean all these people quitting because of their objection to giving raises to a bunch of people in the county, which they did, by the way. They never saw a raise they wouldn't give, or people that they came forward with recommendations to actually lower their pay, but were not going to do that. It's amazing how much money this county that is totally broke and is about to go off the fiscal cliff can come up with to pay county employees more money, or to take care of unforeseen projects that cost 50, 60 grand.
Well, that actually leads to the last story of the year, which just happened, and the Dimick Tower project has gone over budget by over $100,000. And we're going to talk in a moment about why it went over budget. But talking about the budget, they said, well, don't worry about it because there's enough money for that. Now, wait a minute. How can there be enough budget?
From where?
Enough money? You put into the budget for this a $100,000 plus overlay, slop over, really? And you're telling us that there's not enough money to put copies of the documentation in the lobby, which we do. We do it for the public now because they said they refused to do it because it costs 12 cents every week. But they've got over $100,000 to spend on, and we're going to talk about why that went over budget. That's lunatic. That's a great story. Well, another one that happened is the thing with the library. What had happened was Judy Aarons came forward, and she said, I was at the library recently, and when I looked at the computers, why, kids can take a look at porn. Well, everybody has a different definition of porn, but she said something to the commissioners about this. I think that should be blocked from children. And so I thought, here's Kjo in the same room where she's talking, and here's the Daily Courier, Jim Moore, in the same room. Nobody is interested. I went straight over to the library. I'm a journalist. I'm interested in telling you what the news is. Nobody else even bothered. Not the same time, not ever. So I go over there with a thumb drive. I put it into the little computer. I look around to be sure I'm not going to upset anybody. And I call up, and there it is, full-on porn. Men and women, women and animals, guys and guys. Wait a minute. Whoa, I didn't know this. I went back to a meeting later with the commissioners, and I told them what I saw. And Cheryl Walker and the library board that was there, they just laughed and laughed. Oh, you're a pervert. You obviously know how to hack into a system. Wait a minute. I didn't hack into anything. It was using Google Images. Every kid already knows this.
Yeah, and that particular situation was especially despicable because they obviously the library board had talked about it, how they were going to deal with Dale Matthews, and they were all snickering and making jokes and casting aspersions on your character, and they didn't have any reason to do that, but all they could have done, or all they should have done in that situation is say, you know what, we realize that this is an issue and we're going to deal with it. but instead they mocked you. They tried to destroy your reputation.
They
And
call me a social deviant. I'm a
yeah,
library donor for 3 figures. That's a
yeah.
lot out of my income, but I love libraries and I want to support them, but I don't support this board. And Cheryl Walker was leading them and laughing, and they were applauding. Remember how it's against the rule to
Yeah.
applaud at these meetings? What I
It was amazing. It was
That's not going to
amazing.
be in the
And
Courier. The Courier would never print that story. Not the way that I was treated. How about having the Courier waddle on over to the library and see if it's true?
right.
Not happening. Okay,
Yes,
so
and
another
they had
thing.
they
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, they had the same opportunity that you did, because when Judy Aarons came there and announced that, you went to the library directly after that meeting. Jim Moore was at that meeting. He had the same opportunity you did.
He could have also gone to it weeks thereafter, or when I came back to the commissioners and told them what happened. Another thing that the Courier jumped over is for 3 weeks running. I mean, this was a lot of time taking up most of the weekly business session that happens on Wednesday mornings was Simon Hare arguing with Cheryl Walker, and he said, "Where's our economic development plan?" Now, that was back in July, and we still don't have it. She said, "Oh, it's coming right away." Well, it's been 6 months, and there's still no economic development plan. She says, "Well, he wants to replace me with an economic development director. That's my job." But, and boy, it got really, really bad. I mean, they were just calling the names and everything else. And the Courier's guy, Jim Moore, is sitting right there, and that not a peep in the newspaper about this knockdown, drag-out fight. I mean, if it had gone to fisticuffs, that would have been worse, but not by much, because she was calling him names and, oh, he doesn't know
Oh
what
yeah.
he's doing, and my son is older than he is, and I'm taking advice from this guy. I mean, it was not nice. It never happened, you see, because it's not in the Courier.
Yeah, that's amazing. That fight went on for about 45 minutes, and
For
people
3 weeks.
applauded.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, people applauded when it was over, because not because they thought it was a good fight and hey, that was great. They were thank God it was over.
Right.
It was painful to watch,
Well,
and
this
there was no reporting.
particular news show that we're doing is about the Courier and its summary of the year. And in their summary of the year, this never happened.
Right.
In fact, in the Courier, it never happened. And any day of the year, 365 days, and it never happened. We've got
Well,
another. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think it's interesting that I mean, if there's disharmony amongst the commissioners, you would think that the voters would want to know that, and that
Oh,
would
but you
be
can't
something
report that. What would happen if you reported that? Why, my gosh, you'd be telling the truth to the people. And in my personal opinion, I think that Jim Moore and the Courier, their job is not being journalists. I don't refer to them as reporters. They're writers. But what they do is they rewrite the official press releases, and it's the commissioners that help them define what the news is. If it's not in a press release, or if it's not said by the commissioners, it didn't happen. And this was said by the commissioners and still didn't happen. Did you see anything in the newspaper about 3 weeks of this fight?
no. And I mean, the sad part is you have to wonder, why are they not reporting it? Is this an ideological bent on their part, or is this just the thought that somehow, if they report this news, they will lose access in some way to these people in power that they apparently enjoy, and so it sort of makes you wonder about their motivations.
Well, it's Dan Mancuso of the IV News told me once. He said, "Oh, well, I can't cover that story." It was some story. And I said, "Why not? It's a true story." "Yeah, but my advertisers wouldn't like it." My advertisers wouldn't like it?
Well, and certainly that exact same situation could exist with the Courier. If you have influential people who are regular supporters of the Courier in terms of their advertising and stuff of that nature, and they are lapdogs of one or more commissioners, you could understand perhaps why they wouldn't report it.
Well, where do I go to get the news? It's a softball. You already know the answer to that.
Yes.
BadCounty.com. All right.
Well, so that's kind of what we're doing here.
Yes, 4 more little stories that weren't included by the Courier, and mostly not at any time, certainly not in their year-end roundup. What about when Keith Heck said in a public meeting that the IT workers, the computer workers in the county were little moles that sneak around and do lesser services? All right, that's bad enough. That wasn't a slip of the tongue. That's bad enough. But then, I mean, I'm sitting right there and videotaping this. I videotape all of their meetings. It's part of the law. And so when I put that up without comment, here he is saying this, he said that it was posted and we had highly edited it. Really?
Right. Yeah, that was the interesting thing. And once again, this is a lesson to all you politicians out there. It's not the lie. It's not the evil deed that you did. It's the cover-up. And in this particular case, he wanted to make the claim that you highly edited his comments, and then, of course, we published proof that that was, horsepucky. And
he even tried to enlist the help. He used his official position. This is almost as bad. His official position and an email to all department heads to get them to swear that he never said anything like this and that he never does.
Well, guess we proved that wrong. And that's
well, the way we proved that was wrong was, here's this guy trying to get out of what he said. Okay, what he said was dumb. It really was dumb. But, I mean, you can say, oh, gosh, did I say that? I mean, has anybody in their life said something where they went, why did I say that? He could have done that. But instead, he claims that he never said it and that we had inserted words into his mouth. So apparently what he forgot, how can you forget this, is the county also audio records everything that they do in these meetings. So all we need to do, what you did, tell them what you did.
Well, and this is interesting. It's good that you mentioned that, because he mentioned that we had highly edited this videotape. So we took the videotape and our audio from that videotape, and we played it on one line, and then we took their own recording, because they record the minutes of that administration meeting every Thursday. And we played that underneath, and we play one, and then we play the other, and then we played them both at the same time, and they're perfectly synchronous.
Now, how much of this ended up in the Courier?
Well, none of it. And again, I totally agree with you. It was stupid. He should have just gone, well, that was a dumb mistake. I shouldn't have said that. It would have been over. But he didn't say that. Instead, he revealed his character, I believe. And, that's the root of this problem.
Okay, so then the when do citizens get any kind of victory? Well, we got one, is I went to the next weekly business session, and I brought with me $5,000 in cash. Okay, honestly, I had to borrow it. Right, I brought $5,000 in cash, and I said, Mr. Heck, you have said that it was highly edited. So you said 5 words there during the entire meeting, that little moles that sneak around. Now, where was it edited? Between little and moles, between sneaking around? I tell you what I'll do. Here's $5,000 in cash. All you need to do is point out to everybody, as you've already tried to do, where the edits were. Just tell us where the edits are, and this $5,000 in cash is yours right now.
Yeah, that's one of the better dramatic moments of the year, I'd have to say, in terms of. I mean, there wasn't one eye in the room that wasn't looking at you when you did that, and in many cases, in fact, most cases, when you're talking to the commissioners, especially Dale, they're looking down at the desk. They're not looking at him. They're purposefully trying to disrespect him. And so when he did that, I mean, everybody took notice when you did that. It was a dramatic moment for sure.
Well, you didn't see him step up and claim the money or tell us where the edits were because it was a complete big lie, like that Hollywood sign down in California, huge sign on the mountaintop that this was a lie, LIE. It just was totally wrong, and I don't understand how he can show up at another meeting after being shown to be such a complete big fat liar. I mean, that really was a big fat lie.
Well, and you know what? This is it kind of brings up the point that there have been a number of times this year where the public has shut them down, where they had nothing to say after that happened. And one of the better moments of the year, and it came and went fairly quickly, was this multi-county IGA agreement situation that the public shut down. And we were going to be under the thumb of a bunch of people in different counties, and the public shut it down. I was very proud to see that happen, and it was one of those cases where you kind of had to be there. They had nothing to say afterwards. Simon Hare began speaking in praise of the 7-county IGA. I think it was 7 counties.
Yes.
And then by the time the public had finished with public comment, he had flipped 180 degrees and said, "I don't see how there's any way we can do this."
And again, you're not going to see this in the Courier. When you say shut the meeting down, no, it shut them down, shut down their argument. It's never shutting down the meeting. It's not true. People, they're gnawing on the furniture and they're yelling out expletives. The only person that comes close to that is Keith Heck, because he has called us names. We never ever call this guy names the way that he does. Asinine, pathetic. He says that to citizens all the time from his pulpit. And so, all right, another thing that happened that I think is almost done here is pretty interesting, is this story about the drones at the Ivy Airport. You want to take that one, Mike?
Yeah, I don't know. I would say that BadCounty.com certainly led on that story.
Yep.
The Courier. There's only one reason why the Courier reported that story on the day before the county commissioners voted as to whether or not to approve the lease of the Ivy Airport space to this company that supposedly going to be doing stuff with drones there. You heard about it in the Thursday admin meeting. You called Bill Meyer, got on Bill Meyer the next day, and so put the story out publicly. So they had no choice.
I went on Bill Meyer's radio show, KMED, and then we discussed it, and there were a lot of questions. Well, what do I know? I don't know who this company is, which is one of the problems. And when you call one of their 3 international headquarters, no one ever answers the phone. Wait a minute. Now, how are they going to run multiple satellite communication centers if they can't even answer their phone? And then when a couple of little old ladies in the area, they described themselves that way, when they tried to talk with the head of the company, he got really upset and hung up on them. Now, no, wait a minute. Who are these guys? And then another part of the story that relates to Simon Hare is Simon Hare should have said before they took the vote, by the way, I have, and this isn't in the Courier, they're not going to find this out. Come on. I have a conflict of interest because the principal The main guy behind this company is one of my biggest contributors. Really? Okay, now why wasn't that in the Courier? I mean, if we can find out with a couple of phone calls and a little bit of internet research, we don't have a paid staff.
Right.
How come we can find this out and, well, I just don't think they're interested in doing the story. They weren't interested in, here's another story. I actually went to a weekly business session and challenged Jim Moore, who was sitting in the audience. I said, here's a story that I think you should be covering. Let's see if you go cover it. And this is about the Dimick Tower. Now, the Dimick Tower, the reason that it's gone over budget is that, this is amazing, they miscounted the number of floors. Now, you can see them from the outside. You stand on the ground, and you can look up, and you can count 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, they said, the county commissioners and their people who work for them said there were 3. So when the contractors came, various contractors bidding for this project, they bid on 3 floors. What did they think? The 4th floor was going to remain, hovering in the air? And so they're required to bid correctly. So they can't say, aha, you said 3 and it's really 4. They're required to bid on the whole project, which is taking the whole building down. So
Right.
the obvious question when you hear this, which just came out, okay, and I told Jim Moore from the Courier, I told him the details at a public meeting. And I said, so go take a look at this. And we've already reported it, but you can follow up. They have at times followed up like a month later. You can follow up on this, and it's gone over $100,000 more, which they say is in the budget somehow. And how that's possible, I don't know. They miscounted, but here's one of the bottom lines. That company who's doing the work will not be held responsible for the extra cost. You and I will, because county legal counsel, who's now out, Steve Rich, he suggested the commissioners approve a contract which lets these guys off scot-free.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder what the other bids looked like, and was the reason that the company whose bid they accepted got it is because they were cheaper by, say, $60,000, or I mean, why? Why did this? Why did this bid come in wrong? And did the bid come in wrong for all of the companies that bid on it? I mean, these, and then you have to wonder, okay, who's going to be kicking back money to whom?
I hear that all the time. Follow the money. Where's the money going? I'm not sure. We don't have any proof. When we do have proof, and our last story will be about having proof, when we do have proof, of course, we're going to say so. The second part of that story, because there's always more when it comes to the county commissioners, is we have already put out the tape that shows Simon Hare suggesting, well, let's not tell the public about this. Really.
Right.
So they're over $100,000 so far, and they miscounted They miscounted. This isn't integral calculus. This is arithmetic. They miscounted the number of floors, and so they've gone way over, and they've decided that they're not. I'm sitting right there with the camera. Good luck in keeping this secret, boys. I'm trying to get the Courier involved and at least looking at it so more people will hear about it. They're not going to hear about it because Jim Moore, hello, Jim, they're not going to write about it. Really?
Yeah,
why?
If there were 30 or 40 floors there, you might better understand how they could forget about one floor.
Well, forgetting about is in the stories of the year for the Courier. Bring it in for a safe landing here, because the only thing that Simon Hare did, according to the Courier, that involved politics in the whole year was he got elected. Woohoo! But wasn't he involved in a sex scandal? Gee, I think I remember hearing something about that. In fact, we were the first ones to make sure that it was out there, and 30 hours later, with this big story, the Courier finally followed through, and they got the story wrong.
Yes.
They said, I talked with the Deacons family. They didn't know where to go. I mean, they didn't even know what the weekly business session was, which is okay. Why would anybody? And so, people like us. And so I suggested, here's where you can go, but I didn't prompt them or anything. I just said, here's where you can go. So we were there. The TV stations used our footage. People were following through with it because we released the story. We couldn't get the Courier to release it for 30 hours later. You know, in the news business, that's important. And when they did, Jim Moore wrote the story saying, well, Simon Hare thought it was just a prank, and Simon Hare thought this would be funny. On this much, everyone agrees. You know, the phrase on this much everyone agrees doesn't belong in journalism, because on this much everyone agrees never happens, especially in a story where the family said, what is this on this much everyone agrees? We don't agree. Who is everyone? Well, everyone in this case would be Simon Hare, his campaign treasurer, and Jim Moore of the Daily Courier. That's everyone. It's not the family. How is this
Right.
possible? I
Yeah,
think that kind of person should be fired, but that's my opinion. Go ahead, sorry.
it makes you wonder about the motivations yet again. You know, the reason why they don't report stories, the reason why they report stories in a favorable manner to the commissioners or the commissioner in this case. You know, you have to question. You have to question: is this a reliable source of news? I think that's the big news there.
Well, our goal is to provide to you some way to get the news. And, you know, if you don't like it, then why are you paying attention to the news? I mean, you can read the Courier and they'll tell you the happy, happy version. Like when Mark Seligman went to the Courier and said, I'd like to write an opinion piece. Well, whether you like Mark Seligman's ideas or not, I mean, it's an opinion piece. And Kevin Wittison, the editor, said, well, you can, but don't tee off on the commissioners. Now, wait a second. You can write an opinion piece, your own opinion piece for the Courier, but you can't criticize government? Really? They are
Apparently.
guardians of the commissioners. And I think that we should be telling the truth as it is, and wherever the chips fall.
Well, and on that note, we're going to be, or Dale is going to be, or Dale and I, or Dale and others are going to be here every night at 7 o'clock. This is a new thing that we're going to be doing, and talking about what the current news in the county is.
And we won't take this much time every time. It's a promise. See you.